Okay, so top 10 edge rushers. Let's talk about some honorable mentions for a second. There's DeMarcus Lawrence, Brian Burns, and Chase Young. There's some other guys, but let's just get into the list, and we'll start off with who I have as number 10. Gonna go with Danielle Hunter here for Minnesota. Now, last year he was hurt, so we're having to use a couple years back now as his real statistics. But you look at some of the stuff he's done. He had 38 pressures in 2018, 36 in 2019, and he does a very good job of converting those pressures into sacks. He has 54.5 sacks in 5 seasons. He's played for 6 years, but if you exclude last year because he was hurt all year, it's 5 seasons. So over 10 sacks a season, and he had 29 sacks in a 2-year stretch, 2018 and 2019, which is the last we saw of him. So I think he belongs on this list. Number 9, Cameron Jordan. Now, you could argue he should be higher. The reason why I have him a little bit lower is just, it's the age, and he didn't necessarily have his best season last year. He only had 26 pressures last year, but he had 92 in the combined 2 years before. So averaging, over 40 pressures per season, but then only 26 last year. And, he's going to be 32 next year. So he's not getting any younger. And the way I kind of view this is just who do I want the most for next season? So the age is a bit of a concern, drops him back. But, if you exclude his rookie season, 93.5 sacks in 9 seasons, he's a guy who will probably have 100 sacks for his career when it's all said and done. So obviously a very dominant player. Number 8, I'm going with Karl Lawson, the guy that the Jets gave $45 million to in a 3-year deal. So, $30 million guaranteed. So he got paid for really one season, though. He was never really dominant up until last year. He had always kind of shown flashes, but last year, 44 pressures. He only had 5.5 sacks, but the pressures was really impressive. And so, he had a better year than someone like Cameron Jordan, which is why he's better than Cameron Jordan on my list. But it is close, and you could argue either way. It really comes down to, what do you value more? Do you value someone who's done it longer consistently, or is it maybe more of a safe option that could do well, or someone who's reached a higher height but has only done it for 1 year? That's where things get interesting, but that's why I have Lawson at number 8 on this list. Number 7, the Defensive Rookie of the Year from a couple years ago, Nick Bosa, makes this list. It's weird because, again, he's another guy who, similar to Karl Lawson, only really had 1 year. Now, Bosa has only played 1 year. He was hurt last year, so it's hard to know exactly. I like to have a bigger sample size to put someone higher up, which is why he's a little bit lower, but his 1 year sample size was awesome. 45 pressures, 9 sacks, that's really good. So he's not quite a top 5 edge rusher until I've seen him do it multiple times, but he is at least in the, in that area. So I'm a big fan of Nick Bosa's game, and I'm hopeful he'll stay healthy next year. Number 6, we have Shaq Barrett. He had 19.5 sacks in 2019, led the league there. So there's that. He also only had 8 last year, and the reason why he's kind of a tough guy to really grade is his numbers are incredible, but I just wonder how much of that is because he gets to play on such a dominant defensive line with so many other great players next to him. That does play a factor, which is why I do think he drops a little bit lower than maybe his numbers would suggest. And again, I don't just look at numbers. I do look at tape. I do look at other things and other factors to determine who I put on this list. But at the same time, 93 pressures in the last 2 seasons, that's going to get you on this list for sure. Number 5, I'm going Zadarius Smith right here. Smith's a guy who, he was good with the Ravens the past couple years. He was good with them. He kind of took a bit to get going, but he eventually goes to Green Bay where he's just been awesome. So, 26 sacks in the last 2 seasons with Green Bay and 124 pressures in the last 4 seasons. 2 of those were with Baltimore, 2 with Green Bay. That's on average over 40 pressures per season for 4 seasons. So that's a big sample size. I know that he can do it consistently. I expect Zadarius Smith to have another 40 pressure season next year. I expect him to have another double-digit sack season next year. And for pretty much everyone below, I think there is a risk that they don't get 10 sacks. That's not that crazy. And in fact, everyone below didn't get 10 sacks last year. The only exception is Danielle Hunter did get 10 sacks the last year he played, but again, he hasn't necessarily got as many pressures as some of these other guys. So Zadarius Smith, I think he's worth a top 5 spot on this list. Number 4, I'm going Myles Garrett. To me, this top 4, there is a jump from 4 to 5. I think there's 4 clear guys who are top 4, and then you can kind of argue with, 5 through 10 along a lot of the ways. But yeah, number 4, Myles Garrett. He's really good, and he has missed some time, a little bit due to COVID, a little bit due to, slamming a helmet on Mason Rudolph's head. But at the same time, his numbers are very good. I'm going to use per 16 game stats just to, make it work a little bit better due to the missed time. But he averages 43.6 pressures per 16 games, and he averages 13.1 sacks per 16 games. And this is with, a lot of times, not playing with a dominant Browns defensive line. A lot of this is him doing stuff himself, and basically he has to really take advantage of when he does, not get a double team, basically. When there is no chip, when he does get these one-on-one matchups, he can make the most of it. Myles Garrett, really awesome player. He's here at number 4. Number 3, another Bosa brother makes this list. It's Joey Bosa. Joey Bosa, you talk about pressures, I'm saying, oh, this guy's impressive. He had 90 pressures in 2 seasons. Well, in Joey Bosa's last 2-year stretch, he's had 99 pressures in the past 2 seasons. So that's very good. The pressures are definitely up there. And again, I'm fixating on pressures. I like to use sacks as well, but a lot of people say that pressures are the better way to use it. A lot of sacks, luck can be very dependent on if you turn pressures into sacks. So people say pressures are the better statistic to use. But also, he has good pressures as well. He averages 12.1 sacks per 16 games. So that's the sacks are certainly up there, and the pressures are up there. And on top of it, I haven't talked a lot about this with a lot of these guys on this list, but a lot of the guys on this list, Joey Bosa included, help stop the run. So that's another factor and another reason why Bosa is high on this list. Number 2, I have Khalil Mack. And you could argue pretty much anywhere from 1 to 4 with Khalil Mack, although I would actually have a hard time arguing him at 1. But 2 through 4, I think you can make the argument because his numbers aren't as good as some of these other guys who are below him. 92 pressures in 2018 and 2019 combined, and he only had 31 last year. So that's not as dominant as some of these other guys. He only averages 10.5 sacks per 16 games these past few years. So he's not as dominant as some of these other guys. He doesn't turn his pressures into sacks as well as some of these other guys, and he doesn't get as many pressures as some of these other guys. On top of it, he is now 30 years old, so he's not getting any younger. However, all that being said, he's one of those guys, you watch the tape, you can clearly see there's more talent and more value he's adding than you would realize. He is someone who will turn these great tackles and make them look like they're scrubs out there. He can beat anybody at any given moment, and he is someone that, regardless of what your team makeup is, you have to be aware of where he is on the field at all times. Statistics don't always tell you who is the better player and who isn't, and who's adding more value and who isn't. Statistics can be a great tool to use. I think you should use them, but you shouldn't only use them, and Khalil Mack's a great example of that. So again, I think you could argue him being a little bit lower if you wanted to, but for me, I still do have him at number 2, even though the numbers might not say that. Number 1, I got TJ Watt, though, because whether you're looking at numbers or whether you're looking at, whatever, tape, whatever you want to look at, however you evaluate edge rushers, TJ Watt is going to be great in that evaluation. We talked about how, hey, Joey Bosa, 99 pressures in the last 2 seasons. That's really impressive. TJ Watt has 120 pressures in the last 2 seasons. He's getting like 20% more than the next best player in that stretch. He's been dominant. He's had 42.5 sacks in the last 3 seasons. So he's averaging well over a 10-sack season. He's almost averaging a 15-sack season for 3 years, which is wild. That's crazy. TJ Watt is a legit monster, and he, I think, is easily the best edge rusher in football. Again, I'm just talking about edge rushers, not just pure pass rushers, because then you can talk about like TJ Watt or Aaron Donald. But in terms of guys who can, just rack up pressures, rack up sacks, and again, someone you always have to be aware of where he is on the field, that's TJ Watt. He's a legit great player, and that's why I have him at number 1 on this list. So yeah, that's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. What are your thoughts on this list? Where do you agree? Where do you disagree? Let me know. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.